What's going on YouTube? OCD for EDC here. And what I got for your face balls today is a brand new prototype model from Orion Knives, and this one is called the Solaris. This happens to be, if you guys are familiar with Blade Banter, this happens to be his design. His name is David, and he has a YouTube channel. He's also the manager of the Apex Pass Around group. And he also is the US rep for QSP Knives, which is the manufacturer of this knife right here. So this is a design that David has been working on for quite some time, and it is finally coming to fruition, and it is going to be a Kickstarter campaign. I don't know exactly when the dates start. I will put those in the description below. Because I'm pretty sure there is a date at this point of when the Kickstarter will start. Either way, if there isn't a date yet, I'll read the description below, and it'll either say the date or give where you can find that information. So anyway, what we're looking at here is materials G10 scales. Blade material here is 14C 28N blade steel. This is a button lock, and it's riding on double row ceramic bearings. So action on this thing is very, very nice. There's quite a few things going on here. You do have a titanium pocket clip. It is a milled pocket clip. And you have a red backspacer as well as red aluminum anodized pivot collars. I'm pretty sure there will also be a blue version, so you'll have blue pivot collars and a blue backspacer. I'm not sure if there's any plans right now to do any other colors, but certainly, there's options here to do different colors if David decides to do that. So, you could, potentially even, maybe he might offer, purple backspacer and pivot collars or something. I'm not really sure, but it would be kind of cool to make it modular like that, to where you could just swap out those parts and, really change the look of the knife, which would be pretty cool. Pocket clip is reversible for right or left tip up carry. And you do have a flipper tab as well as a thumb stud for deployment. It is a pretty tall blade, so we'll get into dimensions here, and then we'll do some size comparisons. So overall length, you've got 7.819 inches. Handle length is 4.67 inches. Blade length is 3.149. Handle thickness is 0.537, so just a little over half of an inch. Blade stock thickness is 116 thousandths. Behind the edge thickness, you've got a pretty high flat grind. You can see the flat right up here, but a pretty high flat ground blade here is anywhere between 18 and 19 thousandths behind the edge. And let's get a weight on this thing quick here. Four point 767 ounces. So a little over 4.5 ounces. You've got just under 3.2 inches of blade. So it's not a tiny knife. Balance point on this guy seems to be kind of right at the flipper tab point. Get in frame here. Right. It's pretty close right there. So there's your balance point. Yeah, it's certainly not the lightest knife, but you do have stainless steel liners in here and pretty thick G10 slabs. Overall, it's just a very well constructed knife. Very, very solid feeling in hand. But let's get into a few size comparisons. So here it is up against the Hogue Deca, and it's pretty much twin the Benchmade Bug Out. So you can see there that the Orion Solaris is overall it is a longer knife than both of these. And let's see what else we got. Here it is with the Hogue RSK. So not a huge difference in length. If I line up the butt end of the knife, you can see I think the RSK is right at 8 inches. Maybe it's 8 1/4. I can't remember overall. And actually, here it is with the mini RSK. So we'll line up the pivots back up there. So you can see it's about right in between those two. And then I have another button lock knife here that is a fairly decent comparison, not in materials, but, well, some materials. But here it is with the Real Steel Griffin. So, yeah, I feel like that does pretty good size comparison there. So the Orion Solaris, like I said, this is a design that David's been working on for quite some time. You can see here his logo here with the 3 stars, kind of like Orion's belt. David has 3 sons, and so there's a star there for each one of his boys, which I think is a really nice little touch. The blade on this thing is a mirror polished blade, and because of that, it does fingerprint a lot. But that's just kind of the nature of what you get with a mirror polished blade. And it is a good looking blade, but if you want it to be really, really nice looking, you're going to have to carry a rag around or a hank or something and wipe it off quite often. So, stonewash the blade might make it a little more user-friendly for EDC purposes, just make it look a little nicer, longer. But other than that, the aesthetics of the knife, I think I like it overall. I like the height of the blade. Really quick, I'll give you that measurement, just so we can see here. So yeah, about 1.2 inches in blade height. This direction here, the height of the blade. But overall, I mean, it feels adequate, for what it is. The forward choil here is super generous, which I really, really love that, because most choils are not large enough for my fingers. Now, ergonomically, for me, this particular knife is a little bit strange. I like it, and I don't want to give the wrong impression here, because overall I do really enjoy the knife. But this bump up right here, it works well for me to have my thumb in that depression if I'm not choked up and utilizing that forward choil. This is really comfortable for my thumb. However, it's not real comfortable back here because I'm running out of handle. So for me, for it to be comfortable on this side of my hand, I need to be choked up, which works well, and I get a full 4-finger grip. But then my thumb's, way out on the blade, which is fine. But it just makes, I don't know, this bump up right here, it seems a little odd. Certainly from a mechanic standpoint, the stop pin is in there, plus making space for the button lock. But there's lots of different ways to do the stop pin. You can do it internally and whatnot. So I feel like, there might be some adjustments that could be made there that would make it a little better for my hand. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't be wonderful in yours. And again, it's not bad. Don't get me wrong. I can use it like this. It's just I'm not going to have a lot of power because I'm moving so far back on the knife that I have my index finger kind of extended out, and I'm holding, like this here. But so it's just ergonomically, it's just a little bit weird for me. Now, speaking of that, just utilizing the space on this knife, I feel like there could have been some changes made that would have improved it for me. And those changes really would have been moving the pivot further towards the end of the scale. Now, in here, we have double row ceramic bearings, which I'll show you. I'm going to disassemble this here in a minute. But there's still ample room that could have been done. And so, don't get me wrong. When it comes to designing stuff, you're always in this quest for perfection and never ever quite getting there. So this is so T8 pivot, T6 for the body screw and the clip screw. Anyway, anytime you're designing something, like I said, it's always a quest for perfection, and you always have to make sacrifices. So, I was not involved in the design process on this knife, so I'm not sure exactly what all iterations it went through and what sacrifices were made. Like I said, definitely the ceramic ball bearings, being double row, take up quite a bit of space. So, there were certain things that definitely sacrifices were made. So you can see here you've got like a kind of a 3/4 liner or a half liner. You can see where that falls into the scale right there, which this design works really well because you could keep this liner design and shape and size and everything, and then just extend, if you wanted to do like let's just say this was the medium size and you wanted to do one smaller and one larger, this makes it really modular for the internal parts, which is really great from a cost standpoint. I really like this design and making the liner smaller than the scale, and that way it's flexible and you can use the same liner design across multiple different knives. But here we can see the mechanics of the knife, and you start to get a understanding for the space that's available. So you can see the stop pin right up here, and of course your button lock, and then the space that's around the blade tang. So you can see there's a lot of available space here where things could have been shifted. And by doing that, by moving the pivot this way on the knife, it would have allowed you to have more cutting edge and a longer blade in the knife. So you can see, I mean, for the overall length of this knife, the cutting edge is relatively short. We have almost an 8-inch knife, and we're just over 3 inches of blade. So, just the compact nature of the knife. I mean, you could have been able to, like I said, just packaging things a little bit differently. Would have yielded different results here. But anyway, like, I think it's a great design. I'm offering up some constructive criticism here. And that's the way I always roll with the things that I design. I want people to be honest and tell me what their real thoughts are, and not just give me some fluff just because they think that's what I want to hear. So again, I'm not, I really like the knife, but I'm trying to be as real as possible here. So, anyway, the other thing that makes this a little bit odd for me is the placement of the thumb stud, and this again has to do with the packaging. So if you look at the distance from the center line of the pivot to the center line of the thumb stud, that measures, I measured it once, I think it was like 1.4 inches. And so you're talking about like maybe it wasn't quite 1.4. I don't remember exactly what it was. I know it was over an inch from center line of pivot to center line. So you're talking about an arc that this thing's making, a 2-inch diameter circle. If you were to draw these two circles out there, the travel of the thumb stud is a very large circle. And if you compare that to other knives, which I'll show you here in a moment, so I think, you can see the double row ceramic bearings, the button lock, and all the stuff. We'll go ahead and throw this guy back together, and you can see, I'll show you some comparisons here and what I'm talking about. So, like I said, I do really like the design, and one of the greatest things about this design is its price point. So, there's not a lot of well-made button locks out there that are under $100 with decent materials. Of course, there are some budget button locks, no doubt, but they're just not really that great, and we don't see a huge number of button locks out there. So I really like the fact that this one is coming in. David told me that he's hoping that the price is going to be right around $85, which I think is fantastic. I love to see an $85 price point on this knife. That just is really, really great. So let me get this clip back on here. And I'll show you what I'm talking about with the thumb stud and the arc that it makes. And for me, it's just a little bit different. Again, I'm not really knocking it. You can see here, blade centered right back up perfectly. Action on it is great. You know, the fact that this thing's riding on double row ceramic ball bearings is really, really fantastic. And just makes for really great action. And QSP does a really nice job. It does have a D-shaped pivot, which is really great. And so when you're looking here, in order for me to get my thumb on this thumb stud, because of the large radius difference between the pivot and the thumb stud, I have to move the knife, move my grip back on the knife to get my thumb in position to flick the blade out. Now, if I compare that to, say, the Hogue Deca or the Bug Out, you can see that the relationship from the center line of the pivot to the center line of the thumb stud is much, much closer together, as well as, so that makes just a much smaller circle. And therefore, I don't really have to adjust my grip from where I'm ready to thumb flick the knife as well as grip the knife. And with the Solaris, I have to put it like this and move it that way in my hand, flip the knife, and then choke back up on it to get it to where it's comfortable in hand. I can show you here. We'll measure this out just real quick here. So we're about, actually, it's just a little under 1.1 inches, 1.07 inches. Maybe it's a little less than that, even 1.065. We'll call it there. I just locked my caliper down just to give you an idea the difference here. So center line of the Hogue pivot, and so this would be the center line of the Orion pivot or the Solaris pivot. You can see how much further the thumb stud is inside of that. Again, on the Bug Out, same thing. If I hold that center line, you can see the thumb stud is way inside that measurement. And as well, on a bigger knife, even, the Hogue, the Ritter Hogue RSK, same thing. The full entire thumb stud is inside, where the thumb stud is on the Solaris. And of course on the Mini RSK, same deal. You can see the big difference there. So it's just a little bit different. Like I said, it's not a huge negative thing, and I definitely will pick one of these up when they become available. Mainly because I really enjoy 14C28N. I think it's an awesome EDC steel, especially for budget knives and knives under $100. It's a great steel. It sharpens well. It performs well. And QSP just does a great job with their stuff. So I have no doubts this is going to be a quality made knife. But, there's a few of those packaging things that I think would have been, or could have been a little bit more comfortable for me. So just the simple fact that, this is making such a large arc around the pivot, it just has a different feel to it than what I'm used to with a thumb stud knife. Now, the button is, I like the fact that it's so small. Most button lock knives, the buttons are much larger. You can see here on the real steel. And I like that it is smaller. It protrudes enough that it's easy to get to, and it functions well, so no complaints there at all with the button lock. It works exactly as advertised and does everything you want it to. The button is still proud of the scale even when the blade is released. So I like that. You don't have to use the tip of your thumb. You can actually just use the pad on your thumb to release the blade, which is really great. And, here's another budget button lock. This one here is the CRKT, I think it's called the BT Fighter. Yeah, BT Fighter, Brian Ty design. Again, though, you see this one's a flipper and a thumb stud knife. And again, the thumb stud is just much, much closer to the center line of the pivot. So on the thumb stud, I just, that's, and it's probably has a lot to do with what you're used to. But most all thumb stud knives, the thumb stud's much tighter to the pivot. So it just makes a different feel and a different experience here. But overall, I think the knife is really, really well done. I think, sub $100 to have double row ceramic bearings, to have, these touches of color with the aluminum and the G10 backspacer, titanium pocket clip, 14C28N with the polished blade. I think it's really spectacular. And under $100 is really, really fantastic. So I really, really enjoy that. I think he's hitting a market right where, kind of right in a sweet spot in that $85 range, provided that the price does come in that window. And I think it will, give or take, $5 or $10 or something. But definitely this thing's going to be under $100, which I think is just really great. You're getting some nice materials, really nice action, all those things. And, David's a great guy, and I really want to see him succeed with this project. So yeah, hopefully you guys are enjoying this one. And maybe, we'll see a Solaris 2 version 2.0 that, some of these tweaks and changes can be made. And, you could end up with a 3 3/4 inch blade or something in a handle of this size, and make all this tighter together, a little more compact. And yeah, then I would be, then I think it would, for me, it would improve the design a little bit, if it was just packaged a little bit better, and just, more compact up in this area. But otherwise, I think it's a great design. Good job, David. I know how hard it is to design your own stuff. You guys will understand what I'm talking about here pretty soon. I have some things that I'll be rolling out before too long. But yeah, so really good job, David. I really appreciate you letting me take a look at this thing, and I've really enjoyed having it. And yeah, so those are my thoughts on the Orion Solaris. I was going to do a little more comparing it to this knife, but this video is already too long, and I've said really everything that I really wanted to say. This knife here, the Real Steel Griffin, it's a good budget button lock, but it's not on the level of this. So, keep that all in mind. I mean, this is a decent knife for sure, but this is a better knife without question. So basically, these are both button locks. They're both rocking 14C28N, but that's really where the similarities stop. This is aluminum scales. This is G10. I like the feel of the G10 better. This has this kind of wonky lock scenario, which I don't even understand why you need that when it's not a push button auto. So, I mean, I guess so you don't accidentally hit the button, but yeah, I just don't really care for the whole lock scenario on there. I just think this is a better knife. So anyway, thanks a lot, guys. Hope you enjoyed that one, and we will catch you next time. Bye.